Welcome again to the channel. In the previous episode, we unboxed the computer case. I think it went pretty well. Today we're gonna go ahead and reveal the motherboard. We're also going to go through the various parts of the motherboard. I'll try not to be too long, but this is the pretty much the central part of your computer, and so it is important to understand what's going on. So I'm not just gonna just open the box and say, "Ta-da! Here it is." Close it. Then when the time comes to put everything together, I'm just simply just gonna throw it in there and send you guys on your merry way. It doesn't work that way, because actually, if you don't understand how your motherboard operates, or the minimum what things are supposed to be plugged in, there's a big possibility that you end up damaging your motherboard or the parts you put in it, or you order something for it and it so happens that it's not compatible with your motherboard. Like for example, as we described on the previous video, I've chosen the Pro series of the MSI class motherboards, and as you can see in here, it says it's for an Intel processor. It's not an AMD processor. So if you happen to grab one of these off the shelf, or you order it online, and then some other time you go to the store, pick something else that is there at a good price or what have you, then you come home trying to put it all together, and it either doesn't work because it's not compatible, it doesn't fit because it's the wrong thing for the motherboard. So it is important to spend some time with it, get to know it, because the least that you want to do is either get the wrong part, or it is the wrong part. I mean, it is the right part, but you plug it in to something that is not supposed to, and then you fry that part or the motherboard. So today we have the Pro Z790P, which is the chipset, and we'll talk about what that means to the motherboard and most importantly the processor. Obviously, this is the Wi-Fi version. It has a Wi-Fi built in, and it accepts DDR4 memory. So pretty much this the description here is a 3-part description, in a sense 4-part. Okay, 5 parts. You have the manufacturer over here in the corner. You're gonna have the series that this manufacturer is offering. In this case, it's the MSI. You have many different brands, and of course the chipset. That if you look a little more digging, you'll find out pretty much that this means what kind of capabilities your motherboard will be able to support. And again, we'll go through those stats later, and a little bit more information about the motherboard. Like for example, what it's equipped with. This one has Wi-Fi on it. It has Wi-Fi, and of course the type of memory that it will, without any modification, which type of memory would I accept. And down here, of course, in blue, doesn't have to be in blue, it's just the way that they designed the box. Of course, this information might probably be scattered some other place depending on the how the manufacturer decided to create the box, but the information should be somewhere around So when you're looking at it, you'll be able to pick out, okay, this means this, this means that. In this case, it's an Intel motherboard, so you will buy an Intel processor. In that case, we have the i5, and that will be just fine for what I'm trying to build. So yes, if you look around the box, you're gonna have various descriptions of additional capabilities and stuff like that, which of course you can find on the website. I like when it's on the box, because then when I'm shopping around, then I can see what I'm getting, and I can actually do a quick comparison to the box that is next to it. As for example, if one comes with Wi-Fi and the other one doesn't come with Wi-Fi, and it's a $40 difference, do I really need Wi-Fi? You know, I'm not gonna have this thing on my lap, and I still prefer to connect it via a network cable. And if I really need Wi-Fi capabilities for whatever reason, then yes, I'll get the one with the Wi-Fi. But at least I will have the choice, and I'll be able to tell right at the spot and make appropriate decisions. Because little things like that, then you can just put those $40, if that was the difference, and just put it towards something else. And $40 can get you a long way in a better cooling system, GPU or memory. Definitely a lot will go a long way in memory, or a bump on a processor. So yeah. So again, you know, it's depending on the manufacturer, how to make the box, and how much information you have there, that's what you will find. Otherwise, yes, the website will be the place. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the box. Yes, this will probably come in a anti-static bag, but I just didn't want to wrestle with it and stuff like that. Now, very, very important when dealing with computer parts that you're going to be handling, and that includes even memory chips, or any video card, or any card, and the motherboard including, of course. Any component that you're going to be handling, just like we're about to do, and as well as the installation, you have to make sure that you don't touch any of the bare metal pieces, just to prevent from discharging any static electricity that you have accumulated by moving about. Obviously, there are certain conditions that you have to meet for your body to accumulate static electricity. For being your clothes, what kind of flooring you have, especially if it is material, carpet and stuff like that, or if you have a plastic mat, not rubber, plastic, that tends to, via friction, charge up with static electricity. But most importantly is if you're in a cold, dry environment. So when those things are met, then yes, that's 100% ideal for your body to accumulate a charge. So yes, there's a percentage of how much humidity, how much is it cold in the room that you're at, and that all those things create the perfect storm, and what you're wearing and all that stuff. But just in case, and we all pretty much have experienced this, where we go and try to open up a door and you get zapped, or you're trying to get out of your vehicle and you have a small amount of static accumulated, but just simply the charger gets accumulated around you and in the vehicle, of course. So we have to make sure that we don't discharge that onto any of the components, because there it so may happen that when you're touching or nearby it, there might be something that can be affected by such a discharge, because it is a high volume of electricity. You'll be surprised how much. But that will be, it's not going to be enough to kill you or kill somebody else. It's not like we have that kind of superpower. But anyway, but it could be deadly to your components. Now, they might not be 100% fried, but they might start acting up. So, for example, a memory chip. Yes, the computer will probably recognize it, but your programs will start crashing. Obviously, you associate that issue with a static discharge because you probably felt that when you were handling the memory, either installing it or removing it or what have you, you're gonna hear a zap, or you will feel that when you try to reach for it, there was a discharge. Or granted that all those conditions were met, as I said earlier. So if you suspect that you had discharged yourself onto a component, and then the computer started acting up and freezing or what have you, then you can probably put that one and one together and say, yeah, probably fried, whatever it was that you had that experience, that that interaction with. So be mindful of that. Again, it could be recognized, it could act like it's there, but if you suspect that you discharged onto the component, yeah. And once it's fried, it's fried. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do with that. All right, so here we have the box. We're gonna go ahead and I'm just simply going to remove the cardboard tray. Not gonna try to touch it too much. And inside the box, you're gonna find the back plate, which we may or may not need. That's depending what we have on the case. And you have a couple of data cables for your hard drive. And since this is the Wi-Fi version, you have the two antennas, which by the way, and don't let me forget this, I probably will, typically when you have modems or anything of transmission that doesn't have a built-in antenna, prior to applying power to that device, to that transmitting device, my experience is that you want to have the antennas connected, because you may end up damaging the transceiver on that device. So that's why a lot of communication systems, wireless communication systems, the antenna is already built in, and typically we don't even think about let me plug in the antenna, because it's already inside. But yeah, so anything that has there's a wireless system that has removable antennas, install them before applying any power to the device. And what I mean by that is that yes, the motherboard could be energized, but the actual Wi-Fi system could be turned off. So then, if that's the way, you're gonna the state that you're gonna leave it in, Yeah, okay, fine. But as long as you don't power it on, you'll be okay. But just in case, we're still gonna install the antennas, okay? What else we have here? I suspect this is the drivers for the motherboard in instructions, which is very useful. We're gonna look at that, but on the website, and I'll pop that up in a few minutes. So let me go ahead and close this up. I'm gonna spend some time getting to know the motherboard, because the list, like I mentioned before, the last thing you want to do is to plug in something in the wrong spot and really see sparks fly. Now, a lot of these things, a lot of these connectors and slots, etc., they are labeled. Some of them are very intuitive, some of them may not, but at this point you'll be like, oh my god, there's a lot of stuff. Oh yeah, but by the way, things that only get plugged in only one way, and the connectors, they should fit. Yes and no. So we wouldn't be able to tell until we have the motherboard inside the case, and you have the spaghetti of cables protruding all over the place, and we'll see that once we start getting the all the components together. And at that point you will be okay, where is this cable coming from, what this abbreviation means. So it's good to know where things are, especially when laying the cables, because then this way, as we saw in the video when we went through describing the computer case, and I'm pretty sure you'll have the video link somewhere on the description below, so you can go ahead and take a look at that, see what we discovered with that essentially $30 case. You'll see that there are several openings all around the case where you can fish cables through. So by knowing the layout of your motherboard, you'll be able to do a better cabling management. And as we saw that particular case, and most of the cases nowadays, you can actually see inside. So the best thing that you can do for whether if it is your trophy computer or display computer, or just simply so that way it looks better, the best thing you can do is try to fish the cables that pretty much are laid right next to the connector where it's supposed to go to. You don't want to have a power cable come out from down here over here, and then you realize, oh, it's on the other side of the motherboard, and you'll be stretching it all across, when you can just simply just fish it to the nearest location or opening. And again, once we put all this stuff together, we'll concentrate more on that at that point, less on what each port means or what have you. We'll do that in this video, so then that way when we start putting everything together, we'll just concentrate on making it pretty and functional. So to the motherboard, obvious things. Here you have your CPU socket. This one is a LGA 1700. It's pretty much the socket nomenclature. the socket type. And one thing that I was reading is that if for any reason you have to return the motherboard to the manufacturer, they suggest to put this cover back on. This cover will come off in order for you to install the processor. And again, we'll see that when we start putting everything together, in maybe in the next video, probably the next 2 videos. I have a couple of things that I'm going to be unboxing, and I'll do that video with all those little things together. Not a long video like this one or the previous one was, because there's not too much details on the stuff that is remaining. The case and the motherboard is probably the ones that I want to concentrate on. So when you're presented with this challenge, you know what to look for, and not only that, you don't make the mistake of plugging in stuff on the wrong place. Also, by doing this discovery, you already, by just looking at it without looking on the website or the instruction manual, you actually see what capabilities your motherboard has. Like for example, these metal pieces here, aluminum, they're painted black with a little bit of decor and slots here and there. That's pretty much for heat dissipation. You have here voltage regulators, for lack of a better word, that feeds the CPU and of course the rest of the components, and that's gonna get hot. Maybe not hot to cook a turkey on it. That will be the processor if you don't put a heatsink on it, but hot enough that if left uncooled over time, it will affect the component. So by just looking at it, you can tell, okay, the manufacturer actually has included extra stuff in it that will perhaps extend the life of the motherboard, or will be able to resist high temperatures for whatever I throw at it. If this is going to be a gaming machine, so at least that gives you a little bit of an edge on how much you can push the motherboard, and like for example overclocking it and all those things. The same thing goes with the memory. Some memory have a shield kind of sort of similar to that. They come in many different various sizes and styles and all that. It is for the same purpose, to help it dissipate heat, allowing it to last longer and have better performance, especially if you overclock it, which this motherboard actually supports overclocking memory. Another thing that you can tell right off the bat is that I have these little connectors here that might not mean much. Let me see if I can undo this one, but those are for your M2 drives or your SSDs. So right away you can tell that, and I'm going to remove this heatsink that comes for the primary one. You can see this has some paste underneath this plastic, which I'll remove once I install one, and that's going to help again adhere to the surface of the memory chip, or the M2 chip, which essentially is it's going to be your hard drive. if you choose to use any of these. You can still use your conventional hard drives with this motherboard, so you have plenty of choices with this one. But nonetheless, your primary one, which should be here, like your operating system, if you want to install an operating system one, and then other ones for general storage, this one comes with its own heatsink. So I'm going to put this to the side. What else we have here that's easily noticeable? Memory slots. There's some motherboards that only come with 2 slots, which limits you, because with having 4 slots, at that point you'll be able to tell that, okay, if it has 4 slots, that means I can put more memory, technically speaking. But not only that, but the thing is that I'll be able to use smaller memory sticks if I want to, or I can use large memory sticks. And what I mean by that, so let's say, for example, if this motherboard, the max memory you can install in it is 32 gigs, then that means that, you know, you can use 4 gig sticks, which gives you 16. Obviously, you know, if you use 8 memory sticks, then you get your 32. But if you have, which means that you can actually upgrade, you know, with time. So for example, if you just are able to buy 2 4 sticks memory, well, so you still have 2 additional slots that are open. But if you see a motherboard that only has 2 memory slots, then you kind of sort of press on buying all the memory that you probably need at that moment, because if you only have enough money to buy just 2 4 gig sticks, but you actually want it to be at a 16 capacity, 16 gig memory capacity. If you only have 2 slots, but you only have enough to buy 8 gigs of memory, you know, 2 4, when it comes time to upgrade, you actually will have to pretty much dispose of those 2 and buy 2 8 memory sticks to bring you to the 16 gigs that you wanted it. Versus if you have 4 slots, you can buy your 2 4 gig memory sticks, and then later on you can buy additional 2 4 gig memory sticks. Kind of hard to kind of put those 2 numbers together, and 2 sticks of 4 gigs each. How about that? Yeah. And then later on you can do the same, and then voila, you have your 16 gigs that you always wanted. But that is if you have like this setup has, that you have 4 slots to put memory in. But again, if you have only 2 slots, which some motherboards do, then yes, you kind of sort of press against a wall at that point. So those are the obvious things. Besides, of course, on the back side, all the connectors that you have, that's obvious. Some motherboards have video output, some motherboards don't. But most of the time you're gonna see a lot of them come populated with video ports output. So for the stuff that you don't see, well, one last thing, your card slots. This one here has 4. They pretty much based on PCIe architecture, and this one here looks a little bit different than the other ones. kind of sort of for two reasons, but not mainly for one reason. And it's because since this is a gamer motherboard setup, this slot over here is reinforced, and the idea is that if you bought a gamer machine, you're probably gonna have a GPU card installed in it. And as you know, they may be heavy, they're bulky, and of course, all depends which type you buy, obviously. But the idea is that there's going to be a card in this slot that's going to be much heavier than the other ones, because the purpose of this motherboard is more towards a gamer machine. So that's why this one is a little bit different than the other ones. It's reinforced. Now underneath the hood, because this is a gamer machine, this particular one has a much higher bandwidth throughput, and we'll go and look at some of the stats later as we go through the demonstration and all the instruction manuals and the other stuff that I found as well outside their website. So the other ones are pretty much normal PCIe slots, and they vary in the maximum speeds that they can transmit. With the overall architecture of motherboards, everything has to communicate, and obviously towards the processor. So you're gonna have things that have more higher priorities than others, and in this case you're gonna have the memory has obviously a higher priority and a higher bandwidth between between the CPU and the memory. So these two items here will have higher priority and higher communication speeds. And that's inside the electronics and all those little lines that pretty much serve as highways, if you will, inside the motherboard and the different layers of the motherboard. The same thing goes with on the video section or the cards section. This one here has higher priority than the other ones, again because this is a gamer motherboard. So the idea is that you're gonna have a dedicated card for video with its own processor, which still needs to talk to this other processor and perhaps some of the memory, because the card will also have memory, but you still need that fast communication at a higher priority. So you have several pieces of the motherboard itself, which has priority ranking, if you will, or hierarchy, and with that comes a designated maximum speed that they can transmit inside the motherboard. It has nothing to do with outside. It has to do nothing with your internet speed or nothing like that. There is a communication highway, multi-layer highway, inside your motherboard, and various components that need to tap into those various levels of or speeds or highways will be designated a particular route to talk to specific components inside your motherboard. So again, that's just the underneath the hood kind of thing. So anything else obvious? Not really. Yes, it's a CMOS battery over there that keeps the motherboard alive while while not being plugged in, which is that's very important. And the rest of the stuff, you probably have to dig into the manufacturer's website, or you probably have to go to perhaps the Intel website for additional specifications, especially on the chipset. So that gives you an inside the hood, in-depth knowledge of what's going on, other than just the visual part, which a lot of them all have in common. Anyway, so let's go ahead and look at the first website. Let me just bring this up. This is the MSI web page, and of course I already have the motherboard that we have in front of us, and I actually oriented the motherboard in this particular orientation, in this particular way, because that correlates with what we're gonna see. Okay, so obviously this is the Pro Z790P WIFI DDR4, and these are some of the things that is listed on the website. Not everything is detailed in here, and like for example, yes, the chipset is there, and then it talks about the CPU, but you look at that and it's like, okay, but it doesn't say anything that is compatible with an i7 or an i5 or an i9, yada yada yada. It doesn't say that, so how do I know that it's compatible to what I have? It tells you what kind of socket it is. Obviously it's an Intel, so it kind of sort of has to be that. That's a given. Then you have these generations here. It could be the Pentium, it could be a Gold series, or it could be a Celeron. But the only thing I hear on the store is like i7, i5, which is this one, i9, which is the newer one. So what does that mean? That means it's not compatible? Well, yes, it is compatible with various processing generations or processing type. What you have to match is the generation number. So you're gonna have the i3 family, and the i7, the i5, the i9, etc., etc. So that is the processing capabilities of the chip. Then you have the different generations, which pretty much those are kind of like features that have been added. It's like a versioning. Obviously, it's a versioning thing. So you have, I don't know, Water 2.0. Know that Water comes in features or versions. Hopefully not. So that's the main version, 2.0. In this case, will be i5, i7, or whatever. So that is, plain Water. Then it comes out with a 2.1, version 2.1, which is plain Water with a drop of sugar in it. Okay. Then version 2.3, 4, 5, and they added a couple. Now it comes with 2 drops of sugar in it. So they, and then they call it features, but it's the same thing repeated or improve. So that's what the 12 and 13 and 14 generation adds to the capability of that processor, whether if it is an i5, an i7, an i3, etc., etc. And obviously, the Gold series or Celeron series, those are totally different architectures in within the processor. Then, of course, the core count, which varies. That's where you'll find that information within the processing type. If it's an i5, an i3, etc., you're going to have various types of core counts and speeds. The feature set for that particular processing family, remember the WATA 2.0 thing, that depends on the generation. Okay, and the only way that I was able to find that information by doing a little bit of Google, a little Google magic, and let me see, where is it at? It is within the chipset. So I went on to obviously Google led me into give me a lead for an Intel site, and I was able to get a little bit more information about the chipset. And of course, they have different, overall family chipset here listed over here, but that gives you an idea of the capabilities of that particular chipset that is imprinted on the box, which is part of the label. In this case, is the Z790P, which of course is depicted here, and in all the various capabilities of that particular chip. So that's when I said that, hey, when you look at the box, look at the various information. One of the main things you have to look at is the chipset, because the chipset is going to tell you what it supports, what all the capabilities that this motherboard will give you. So it's not just the processing comparability, but also anything else that the motherboard will offer, or be able to be compatible to. So in this one, it offers assistance with the Wi-Fi, the networking capabilities, and the speeds that is able to support, as well as the speed of the slots. So like, for example, somewhere here I saw that this particular chipset has a capability of, let me see if it's here, transmitting 5 gigs over Wi-Fi, or at least it will be in the future, because it looks like it's Wi-Fi 7. This one I believe is up to Wi-Fi 6. But as you can see, the family chipset does offer all these benefits here. So if you encounter another motherboard with a different chipset, totally outside the 700 family, then hey, you might probably be losing or gaining other capabilities. So be familiar with what chipset you have, because that can tell you what not only the capabilities of the motherboard, to also include, when you start hunting for drivers, then you also be looking out for that in the event that you don't have a provided CD with it. One of the main things you have to concentrate in is, hey, I need to get the drivers for that particular chipset. pretty much at that point you will be telling your operating system what kind of motherboard you have. And once you do that, then the operating system will be able to have a better chance to know the rest of the components and perhaps automatically download the drivers, or it may probably have them already on the operating system's library. But that will be one of the first things in the event that you have to do that. Nowadays, the operating systems do recognize a large amount of chipsets out there. But just in case if it doesn't, and your computer is just simply not recognizing all the components you know that your motherboard offers, the first thing to look at is like, hey, let me see if my operating system knows what kind of motherboard I have. What kind of motherboard I have? Oh, let me look at the chipset and find the appropriate drivers for that. Okay, so let's see what else I have here. Going back to the MSI.com website, which is the manufacturer, the various memory speeds in here, and you can use memory that can be overclocked, which is the XMP. Any memory that you see that's overclockable, or probably say XMP compatible already or whatever, can reach up to speeds of to 5333 megahertz, which is a little bit above DDR4 speed, if I'm not mistaken. Not quite DDR5 speed, but by overclocking it, you will be pushing the boundaries close to a DDR5, or the bottom part of the DDR5. Obviously, the DDR5, has a big, has more ceiling than that. But yeah. So if you want to overclock, those components, you have to make sure that those components are compatible with overclocking. And I believe the motherboard itself, perhaps in the BIOS menu, which we will see later on, facilitates to do all that stuff. Now you still have to know what you're doing. So definitely YouTube and a little bit of Googling probably will provide those answers for your particular case. Okay, because the components may be different than from case A to case B, so you have to know what you have, what is their limit, and if you can actually do it. So make sure you do that research before you overclock anything. Obviously, this is not a server platform, so it's not going to be compatible with server memory. So this is why, again, you have to make sure what your motherboard can support, so you can buy the correct part. That's why you want to start with the motherboard. This is pretty much the center, well, literally the center of your computer. Yes, the center of the center is a CPU, but the center of your overall computer is your motherboard. Everything else has to go through it. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Yes, it has an onboard graphics output. If you want to achieve 4K capabilities just with the built-in video output, you have to have a processor that incorporates video capabilities in it. Pretty much a section of it with memory and additional processing power to be able to process a higher output, which the processor that we bought is it has video integrated in it. Again, it's just a section that will allow you to process higher video output without sacrificing the 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 processing time for everything else. Okay? And that's of course if if you're not going to use a dedicated GPU card or regular video card for that purpose, you can still operate just fine by giving it that additional resource. So let's see what else. Yes, the slots. So the slots that it's talking about in the website obviously refers to these slots here, and then like I said earlier, they're going to vary in speeds, but that doesn't mean that you cannot put a lesser or a slower card on that particular slot, but it's just that it will work up to that particular speed, and the only way you can tell what speed of card you have is, well, when you go out and buy the card, and you will see, okay, I need another video card for whatever reason. But it's going to tell you, this is PCIe 4 or PCIe 1 if it's very a simple card, or if it is a network card. So it's going to have its designation. So the only thing that's going to come in play is that if you need two high-end video cards and they're both 16 PCIe 16, this one here only supports only one PCIe 16, which is this one, which is closer to the CPU. Typically, that's how kind of sort of it goes. Important input devices are closer to the CPU, and within that, you have a hierarchy in a bandwidth to go with it. Then the rest of the slots, I believe this is a maximum of 1, a maximum of 4, another maximum of 1. As depicted here, version 3, 4, another 3, and a 5. I went ahead and did a little bit of Google searching, and electronicshub.org pretty much broke it down with a lot of detail. Again, bandwidth, performance, that's that number at the end of the PCIe designation, and of course, why would I need a 16 PCIe 16? And it pretty much breaks it down over here. What more or less that slot will be able to provide to you, and what is the best usage for it. Like for example, like storage. Okay, that particular slot can be used for that. It would be ideal for that because it has the bandwidth needed, required to at least offer you the minimum requirements for that particular card or SSD. And now you'll be saying, but SSD, but I thought we said that you have these other things here that you can plug in the SSD. Well, remember, you also have cards that you can plug into the slots, which have an SSD port in them. I've seen 1 or 4 or 2. So if you are in the situation that you have a motherboard, perhaps an older motherboard, but you do have PCIe 16 that you're not using, and you want to have the ability to install an NVMe drive or SSD, you can get a card and of course install it in your PCIe slot. Now, not because you have or you don't have PCIe 16, you're going to be limited to installing an additional card for storage purposes. It's just simply that you're not going to have the maximum throughput to take advantage of what that card is providing to you. So your experience may probably be reduced by the speed of the slot, and that's why it's important to get to know your motherboard, because in the event that you need to upgrade your existing motherboard and you want to add SSD to it, well, you need to find a PCIe slot that is available in your motherboard with the highest speed. And only that, if there is something there already, but find out if that card actually takes advantage of the speed that is plugged into. So by just doing a simple swap, you'll regain, or you'll take advantage of the card that you just purchased to enhance your machine. So let's see what else we have here. These are the different versions and the total bandwidth that it can support. And on this one we have 5, 1, and 3, I believe. Obviously this article is a little bit dated, but it's still this information holds true to today. Do we have faster speeds out there? Yeah, perhaps. But yeah, so this website here gives you pretty good information on the slots, the capabilities, as far as the bandwidth that it can support, and what is the ideal usage of that particular slot for that particular device, based on the speed that it can provide and support. So, like for example, RAID cards, PCIe 4, it will be just fine. And anything else, pretty much like sound cards, they don't need a lot of speed. Network cards, regular network cards, not server level network cards, PCIe 1 will be fine. Probably capture cards, 1 will be fine. So you have many different usage. The bottom line is get to know your motherboard, especially if you're trying to upgrade your motherboard. Make sure that the cards are in the right slot for their capabilities. And I don't mean not the motherboard, but upgrade the parts that your current motherboard has. If you're upgrading your machine, that's what I meant to say. Okay, obviously, you have an audio with 7 channels, pretty much high definition audio output. If you have that setup, it supports it. In my particular case, that wouldn't be an issue. 2 speakers for me is just fine. But again, your expectations on what you buy is based on what you're going to use it for, and your experience on using those capabilities. It also tells you about the chips, the storage compatibility, SATAs and SSDs and NVMe, etc. And this one here in particular talks about your SATA ports, which you have several SATA ports built into the motherboard. The one that says CPU, they're talking about this guy up here. And real quick, we'll just change to that. And when I was talking about how the motherboard is separated internally based on the speed and hierarchy, this is a good representation of what they're talking about over here, where you have that this particular slot this M2 slot is designated for to be tagged or have a higher throughput, have a higher hierarchy of fast it can access the processor, or how many times it can access the processor based on a time slots. So that kind of hierarchy. So that's why that one is designated for the CPU, because technically speaking, you're going to be using that as your operating system, not as your storage, as your long-term storage. So that particular one is going to be as close as possible, be able to request more time from the processor, and obviously in the memory. So it's going to be designated to be slotted as having a higher hierarchy than the rest of the other M2 slots. In this particular depiction, which is from manuals library or manualslib.com, shows you pretty much hierarchy, who has direct access to the CPU first. Okay, so you have your your M2, you're gonna have your memory, obviously, the GPU slot. You're gonna have for high quality 4K quality video. You're gonna have also assigned to the CPU, because the only way you can get 4K is with a CPU that has that extra capacity dedicated for 4K video. Otherwise, if I will have a CPU that doesn't support that, for me this would not work. The high output would not work. Then everybody else will go into the chipset side, where pretty much they're going to be sharing that side of the drivers, bandwidth, communication mediums, and this particular part of the processor will be tasked with the rest of the components that don't need fast attention of the motherboard, and they will be just fine doing their thing, slightly more isolated side of the motherboard. So this pretty much what depicts. This picture depicts pretty much that that division of who gets access to the motherboard first. Okay, now moving on. Let's see. It supports RAID, which is fantastic in the event that you have failure on the hardware of the storage. And if you have set it up, the next storage device will pick up the load. In a sense, will pick up the load, and no data will be lost. RAID is a totally separate topic, and we'll probably touch that in another video when I'll unpack what's inside that box there. Okay, what else we have? Oh yes, USB. Who would have thought that we will have USB with capacity of up to 20 gigs per second. 20 gigs per second. Again, it's all depending on the devices that you have attached to that particular port, that particular Type C USB, which is right here. So that particular one is capable of speed of 20 gigs per second. And let me see, is that part of? Okay, yeah, that's not part of this here. So that means that is set to. So then that means that is part of. Let's see. Okay, yes. So this is controlled by the chipset processor. Okay. and that kind of sort of makes sense, because once you set something in motion, the instructions are already there. So the processor doesn't have to keep tabs on to see how you're moving files from one side to the other. Okay, so that's why those type of instructions are pretty much kind of like set it and forget it. The processor doesn't have to move every single bit for you. Okay, so as you can see, you have various speeds, various numbers of USB port, which is awesome. It looks like we have like a gazillion here, which is great. Some of them obviously are on the back side, and some of them are on the motherboard. Obviously, we don't see them here as an actual physical connector that we can recognize, but it will be on the case. So once again, the case that you choose has to provide that additional capabilities that your motherboard has, or otherwise you're gonna end up buying something separate and slapping it in front of the of the case, so you can plug in your additional USBs, because your case didn't come with external or front face USB ports, or it came only with 2, and this one can have 3 front facing. So you'll be able to plug in all 3 of them on the motherboard, and then the case will have the actual physical device to plug them in. But if it only has 2, yeah, you'll be shorted out. And I've seen where some cases they will have 2 regular USBs and no USB-C. But this one here, I believe it supports front-facing USB-C, as well as 2 and a 3 also, if I'm not mistaken. But those can only be accessed by plugging them into the motherboard. Otherwise, it's unusable. Okay, so the actual physical LAN has a capability of up to 2.5 gigabit. Again, if you have a switch in your house, a physical switch that will be able to transmit at that speed, then you're set. You'll be able to transmit at that speed, or up to that speed, between the devices inside your area, just inside your house. But that does not mean that your internet will be at that speed. Now, if you do have a modem that can physically provide you that speed, and you're actually paying for that speed, and give you a special modem that you can plug into via your network card with a network cable, which I have some over there. Yes, you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to achieve those speed or close to that. But if you don't, that's not gonna do you any good. This network card will be as fast as the device that you have it plugged into. Now, for the good stuff, and I know this has been so far a long video, but we need to cover a lot of ground, and you need to make sure that you know what your motherboard is capable of, or otherwise you'll be either missing out or throwing money in the trash, or the excuse is that you want to spend more money on it later because you have a good capable motherboard. Yeah, we can go with option 3. So the other stuff, like for example, your power input onto the motherboard, that goes hand in hand with your power supply, as well as, hey, does this motherboard support water pump for the cooling system? When I get the chance to upgrade to an i15 or something like that, obviously this doesn't, may not support it. But yeah, so those additional capabilities, because especially on your water cooling system, you want to make sure that it's regulated based on the draw and the heat that your CPU will be producing, depending on the load. Because remember, this is a gamer's motherboard architecture, so you want to make sure that your motherboard recognize those things. So it doesn't do any good if it speeds up the fan, but it doesn't speed up the pump. Yes, you can buy standalone cooling system that will regulate all that stuff for you, of course. But this motherboard has that in it. Then the rest of the stuff here, regular fans, and if you care for the chassis intrusion, one of the jumpers will give you the capabilities, but you need to have a sensor on the case. What else? Yeah, audio, tuning controller connector, and don't remember what this one is for, but the rule of thumb is that if I don't know what it's for, I'm probably not gonna need it. Well, actually, I did research it the other day, but I just forgot. Probably because I don't need it. But I will be annotating that on a pop-up somewhere over here. Another thing also to add the looks of your display, this one has an LED controller built into the motherboard, and I believe it has several of them. See one of these two connectors here, and I know this one is that one there. So you have a couple other ones that you can add lights to the case. Or if you have fans that have lights, the controller is already built into the motherboard. Again, that's something you can always buy as a separate set if you need either more controllers or if your motherboard doesn't support that. But this one does. It's TPM compatible, version 2.0, which Windows 11 requires, but they're also now lifting that requirement, at least at the time of this recording, and they actually are telling you how to bypass the health check when you're installing Windows 11. Obviously, they have all the information on their website. Again, additional USB port internally. The Wi-Fi and Bluetooth capabilities. Again, if you're going to be using that, it is there. One of the last parts of the description on their website is pretty much what we have back here. Now, these are your Wi-Fi, what your Wi-Fi antennas will be. That's your network card port, your USBs with different speeds, your monitor, your monitor connections there. You have an HDMI and a display port, your traditional mouse and keyboard and corresponding USB ports. But the one that is more important is this mini button here. What that will give you, it's not a reset button per se, but what that will allow you to do is, in the event that you need to flash your BIOS, change the internal operating system of your motherboard, not the operating system of that you're running, Windows, etc., or Linux, or what have you. The operating system that runs your hardware, on the motherboard. That has nothing to do with your memory or cards. They have their own instruction set. You can actually change it, whether if it is a new version came up that fixes issues or adds features, or if something terribly went wrong and you need to reinstall what it has. So you're troubleshooting something, and sometimes it's hard to put one and one together and say, oh yeah, that's the BIOS. If you have not touched your BIOS, it's kind of sort of to point the finger at it if all of a sudden things went haywire, okay, and things are not working. The only time that you will probably have to do some kind of recovery like that is because you were trying to update it, and either you installed the wrong one, which kind of shouldn't allow you to anyway, or when you were trying to install it, something went wrong in the installation and you need to redo it. If you're upgrading it. But if your machine's starting acting up and it was just fine, and there was no updates on the operating system, then it's hard to say, it's hard to blame the BIOS. But whatever the case may be, that button allows you to easily update the BIOS without having to going into the operating system. Because a lot of times, if something did go wrong, whether if it was an update that crashed while you were doing it, and now you cannot boot up to your operating system, that will actually facilitate the flashing of the BIOS by forcing the motherboard to go in a specific state that allows BIOS flashing and not needing the operating system at all. So not too many motherboards have that capability, but I'm glad this one does. Not that I'm planning to have any catastrophic failure like that. Granted, I said not that I'm planning, but things do happen. Okay, so let's see what else we have here. Then on the website just simply shows what else comes in the box. And we're done. No, actually not. Because the website doesn't show you this here. Which you actually took a peek earlier on when my browser just was not behaving. So when you start putting your machine together, you definitely want to have this available. Now, I did not look at the instructions that comes in the paper inside the box, which hopefully it will be this here. Again, I got this from manualslib.com. And this here is definitely very important because it's going to tell you exactly where everything gets plugged in. Okay. Without this, you may plug in things in the wrong place, which will give you the wrong results, or give you the really bad results. Okay, so you have a 50-50 chance of messing it up either way if you don't pay attention to this. Now, for example, the power button, if you don't put it in the right place, the power button that comes on the case. If you don't put it in the right place, then you won't be able to start the machine. And then you're going to be troubleshooting something that has nothing to do with the memory or the CPU or the power supply. It's just that you plug in that lead in the wrong spot. So like for example, let's see if we can, sometimes you can read these abbreviations and you'll be able to tell what it is. For example, like this one looks like an audio jack. That's a jack for RGB, so that's for lights. Then you have system fans, which is the case fans. Then you have, it looks like it's Bluetooth terminal here. Then you have a USB jack, another USB here. Now these USB ports, you see you have 3 actually here, which are audio, your LED lights, then you have your fans, and it looks like the fans have these little tabs here, which I see 3 more on this side. Then you have Bluetooth here, USB 3, USB 1, USB 2. Then you have your SATA ports over here and over here. This is another, this one here is another RGB for lights over here. Let's see what else. Obviously the M2s. This is your BIOS reset. And of course that's a BIOS keep alive battery there. Let's see what else is obvious from this here, because this particular list that we see on the screen only has abbreviation and the location of the port. As you can see, we couldn't tell which one was the case power on and off button. So we still have to look at another section. Obviously we already met these guys over here. These ports here, that's CPU power 1, CPU power 2. Depending on the power supply, you may have just one, or you may have both of them. This provides not just enough power or flow of power into the motherboard, into the CPU section, but it will also act as a they'll back each other up in the event of some kind of failure. But what I read was that it provides ample path for power, and it's also redundant. And that's for your CPU. Obviously, we know the processor, the memory slots, in which of course we have 2. We have A and B, and notice pattern. A1, A2, etc. is closer to, and there is a method to that madness. We don't see it, but internally and in the layers of the motherboard, there are specific paths and length of paths between each memory slot in the motherboard. And the reason for that is so that way when data is being, whether it is stored or accessed from the memory, it all reaches at a relatively same time. So there is a method of not just represented by the numbering, but also the location of the physical location of the memory slots in relation to the CPU. Then we have a CPU fan over here. The pump fan is over here. Pump fan over here. And another system or case fan over here. And we have two more. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 CP case fans, and we have a pump fan and a CPU fan in here. All right, perfect. That'll be great. We're not gonna need so many fans because again, this is not meant to be a gamer's machine, at least not at this point. So I'm pretty sure with a CPU fan and a couple of fans that came with the case, that should be sufficient. I'm not planning to install any additional fans because again, it's not going to be a gamer's machine at this point. Okay, so let's see. Let's go and drill down. Now this is also important. Remember when I said that there's a specific slot location on the motherboard in relation to in between the memory and the CPU? Well, there's also a specific location where you will plug in your memory cards depending on how many you have purchased. In our case, we have 2 memory sticks. Each one of them is 8 gigs, giving us 16 gigs, giving us 32 gig total. So if I only have a single 32 memory card, which actually I could, because this motherboard has a maximum memory capacity of 128. So I could have a single 32 installed in here, but for my purpose, I envision that just 64 will be fine. So that's why I went ahead and bought the 32 gig kit, which has 2 16s. So in my case, I'm gonna be populating my memory slot in DIMM A2, and which is this one here, and DIMM B2, which is this one here. Okay, and as you can see, they don't start with 1, they start on 2. But again, there's a method to their madness, but it's all in relation to the positioning and the hierarchy of memory and bandwidth access between the CPU and the memory slots. Okay, so let's see what else we have here that is worth mentioning before we start putting everything together. We already talked about the PCIe slots. This manual has a lot of good information as far as we already mentioned the difference between not just the speeds, but why this one is reinforced. And actually they mentioned that on the instructions. The M2 locations, we already went through that. Let's see what else. This here depicts how to install the different size of M2 cards, and that's why you have additional tabs on the motherboard, so it will allow you to install and secure the different sizes that the M2 or SSD cards comes in. see what else. Same thing. And again, this information can be found at manualslib.com. Again, I have no relation with any of the websites that I have researched and hence demonstrating here. We already looked at all the SATA slots or ports that we have. In this case, it has 6 internal SATA ports. Let's see what else. And yeah, okay, this is an audio jack. Yeah, we already knew that, but we don't have an internal audio card because I think that's what that is for. So most likely you're probably not going to be using that unless that goes out. Okay, so this goes out also into the case because the case has audio jacks. Yes, correct. So these are the things that you're going to find that when you have when the motherboard is inside the case and you have your cables where it's supposed to come out, in addition to the wires that the case has, you have to account for, okay, the case comes with audio jack, so it doesn't come with audio jack, so then this will be unusable. Or like I mentioned before, or the USB types, it may have a C or it may have an A, or which version we will have, or may have one of each, or just one. So at that moment, you'll, by going through the manuals and all that, you put one and one together and say, oh, okay, now I remember, I do have an audio jack, so that must be this cable that goes in there. So if you remember the location where it's at, then you go ahead and plug in. Otherwise, I recommend 100% to look at the manual. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Front connectors. Oh, here it is. Look at that. So this guy here is what houses my power LED. You know, when you press the on and off button on your case, you should have an LED somewhere in there, depending how fancy your case is. Your power switch, which is one of those there, as depicted here. The reset is on this guy here by itself. I'm sorry, reserve. The reset is the one down here. Hopefully that will be, yeah. And the hard drive activity is here. Again, that's depending if your case has that. It may not. It definitely is going to have a power button and a reset button if you need to reboot your machine, your hard boot your machine because it crashed. So at minimum it will have that. And a power status light will probably have that. But hard drive activity, I don't know if it does. A buzzer. This is for the buzzer, right here. Oh yeah, perfect. Okay, so this here is very important. At least this guy here. So even though it is in one block with several pins in it, it doesn't mean that this connector here that may look the same one as this, it has the same amount of pins, doesn't mean that one will fit here. And of course, hopefully there's going to be a key. One of the ports will be blocked off that will correspond to an empty spot on the pins. If that's the case, then you'll be fine. But if not, then yeah, if all the ports are open on that plug, you probably plug it in over here, and then you'll be like, oh, why doesn't it work? Well, you have your audio plug in over here, and who knows what you did with the other cables. Hopefully you didn't cut them. But yeah, so this is why it's important to look at the manuals and figure out where everything is at. In this particular case, looking closely at the imprint here doesn't really give you a lot of detail of how that particular block of pins or jumpers are segmented. It doesn't tell you that. Okay, you learn something every day. Let's see what else we have here. Again, the 2 CPU power. Then this here is your motherboard power. This one feeds, this two here feeds your CPU, and this one here feeds everything else. Typically they come in a single block, so those two they're very hard to mistake, and that's gonna come from the wire harness of your power supply. They tell you the different voltages there. Nothing that you will have to be too much concerned with unless you're troubleshooting your power supply. Let's see what else. You have your chassis intrusion. It's one of these here. It's not even clear, but one of those there. But let's see if you have a contactor on your case to do that. Otherwise, you're probably not going to use it. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, again, this here is all depending if your case comes with a USB-C in the case, so the wiring will be already there, of course, and it will be connected to this particular port. Otherwise, if your case doesn't have it, then that will be pretty much be a port that you won't be able to use at all. So let's see, unless you buy something in a USB-C port external that you can mount on the case, that will be the only way you can do that, which probably would not look so hot. These are the USBs that we're talking about, these two here. Again, that is probably for the external USB, not probably, but it is for the external USB ports that are on your case. Let's see what else. TPM module, which will be this guy here. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, the tuning controller thingy, which is this guy here. I don't. Which we mentioned before, which that will be that one there. The one on the bottom here, which is this guy. Those are pretty much specialized connectors, and again, it looks like communication. The communication pins here, because you have your request and acknowledgement, stuff like that. I know I read Bluetooth, but it doesn't look like it's Bluetooth. Because it doesn't say it's Bluetooth. But I will do a little more research and pop it up on one of the corners. Chances are that, again, if you can't recognize what it is, you're probably not going to need it. At least not immediately. Okay, the various fans that are throughout the system. Oh, look at that. There's another one. Ah, right here. Ah, look at that. So we have fans here for 2 or 3 different cases. Yeah. Again, I believe the case comes with 3 fans, plus the fan that is provided in the heatsink, which will also will go through all those components in a different video, much more compact, and after that, then we'll start assembling our computer. Okay, let's see what else. Yeah, CMOS and the CMOS reset button and the CMOS battery is there. We are almost done with the components. We already mentioned the RGB. It does have a built-in controller, which you will be able to set patterns on your display. When I mean display, your light displays. But of course, it has to support the function. If it has a built-in controller, if you have your own lights and it has a built-in controller, then there's not going to be a spot to plug this into this here, because this will be a self-contained system. But if those lights are meant to be plugged into a motherboard, then yeah, those will be the spots. For example, like the lights on the fans. Okay, they're actually, some of those are meant to actually be plugged in and have instructions for the arrangements of the lighting be sent to them externally via the motherboard. It's not like the fan itself has a controller in it. All will be controlled through the motherboard and the settings that you'll provide. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Yeah, the additional light or connector for your RGB, your ribbon ones. Here, let's see, what's that? Yeah, right next to the SATA connector. That's for your ribbon lights. Again, there are many types out there, so you have to look at what is compatible with your motherboard. Okay, let's see what else. I think we almost there. I think those are the other components. Oh no, yes. Oh yeah, no. One more thing. Right here, you have a set of lights that will give you the status of the motherboard operations. Pretty much, it's gonna tell you how it feels, and who is the problem child. So by looking at whether if it is a pattern or a specific color or combination of, you'll be able to troubleshoot whatever issue the motherboard is detecting. Obviously, another easy way is that if for whatever reason the machine stopped working, and you think is hardware related, you can, what I call it, undress the machine, remove everything, remove all the extension cards, remove any additional storage, remove your RAM, and try one at a time, one item at a time. Don't plug in any of your video cards or any additional cards you may have, or any of the storage. You may or may not need your operating system hard drive or SSD, depending on what the problem is. But you can just address it, plug in one thing at a time, boot it up, see what happens, see how far it gets you. And with the memory, again on slot A2, test one memory card at a time, and if all of them work fine, if they boot up to a certain point, then all of them behave the same, they work, and then you start plugging in, leave the CPU in there. At that point, leave it, don't take it out, and then you start plugging in the rest of your devices one at a time. Yes, it's gonna take, turn it off, turn it back on, make a change, yada yada, until you find what is wrong with it. If it still behaves the same way, then it might probably be a software issue. But those are some of the things that you can do to troubleshoot problems that perhaps your LEDs are not telling you about. And thinking about it, if the LEDs are happy, chances are there's probably something on the operating system. Nothing that you did, of course. No. Okay, so pretty much that is it for your motherboard. It is a long video, but it is very important to know what your motherboard can do. And it's not only this motherboard, but perhaps the motherboard you already have on your system, and there might not be the need for you to change your motherboard. Maybe you, by now knowing what to look for, you can perhaps just enhance it, and getting extra life out of it, and by simply rearranging your cards, putting them in the slots that they belong, based on their speed, or perhaps because you need to just change them out because your motherboard may perhaps are able to support higher end or higher capacity or quality or speed or what you currently have. You just simply didn't know what to look for. This here hopefully gives you that kind of knowledge or well, yeah, I guess knowledge of what to look for, how to meet your motherboard, say hi to it, don't shake hands because you don't want to sap it, it will get upset with you, but this way you know what to look for, how to assemble it, and if you're gonna go buy one, same thing. Just by looking at it, you have a good idea of what your new motherboard can do that your old one can't, just by looking at it and comparing what you see. So with that, I hope this video was not just entertaining, but educational. And with this, next we'll start unboxing the other items. That one's going to be a quick video because I do really want to get this machine together. And once we do that, get Windows 11 in it, do a few tests, then I'm going to tell you how much I paid for everything. Not going to tell you yet because I'm still crossing my fingers, and hopefully that my purchase was a good purchase, and hopefully we'll be able to get something out of it. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.